Hello. If you are looking for Emily, again, I do apologize. Please don't blame me. Blame the state of the British rail system, specifically Chris Grayling, who I think we can all agree is a bit of a Burke. My opinion, not that of my employer. But I'm not here to speak to you today about Chris Grayling. I'm here to speak about intent optimization, luckily, why it matters, and how it can improve your SEO results. So, pretty simple structure to the talk today. Going to be covering 3 key points. Going to be looking at why intent matters, how you can analyze and optimize for intent, and finally, does it work? So, a little bit about me. Been doing this for a long time. I'm currently an SEO strategist at Conductor, which is an enterprise-level SEO suite. Last year, we were acquired by WeWork, so I was hired by Conductor to lead SEO for WeWork across EMEA. And I am shamelessly interested in kind of understanding search intent, query intent, and using that to increase the performance of our SEO campaigns. So why does intent matter? Whenever we look back at the formative years of the search engines, we see that in this white paper from Alta Vista, for example, published in the late 90s, it specifies that classic IR, or information retrieval, which is essentially the function that a search engine plays. Traditionally, it's based on people searching for information, but whenever a person uses a search engine, their need isn't always informational. It could be navigational. It could be transactional. And even at this stage, back in the late 90s, the search engines had evolved to account for that. In more modern times, we see it referenced in the Google Quality Rater guidelines, where they break it down into 4 buckets. Know, if you want to find an answer to something. Do, if you want to do something specific, download an app, for example. Cite, if you want to visit a specific website. Or visit, if you want to visit a store in person. But there's a problem with that. It's just a little bit too broad. It's difficult to apply that to a campaign in a meaningful way. So, a while back, a really good SEO called Kane Jameson suggested this model for intent classification, where he speaks around research, answer, transactional, local, visual, video, news, branded, and fractured as classifications of intent. And then the way that those classifications work is based on the SERP signals, so the features that are visible in the SERPs for a specific keyword. So if you see a featured snippet, you can assume it's a research-based intent. If you see a map pack, local intent. Video pack, video intent. So on and so forth. So that's much better. It's significantly easier to classify the intent of a SERP in a meaningful way. But why would this be useful? I'll give you an example that's particularly relevant to WeWork. So co-working space London. Whenever we look at the SERPs for that particular query, we can see that 80% of the results on page 1 are research-based pages. They're articles. They're blog posts listing some of the coolest co-working spaces in London. There's a real absence of transactional pages for that particular query. And that makes you question whether or not you're likely to get a transactional page ranking for that term. We change that to office space London, so semantically it's very similar. It's structured in the same way. We see that the intent shifts completely. 100% of the pages on page 1 are transactional. So again, if you're aware of that, you can start to tailor your campaign around making sure that the right type of landing page is targeted to the right type of keywords. So just to recap kind of where we're up to, we know that every searcher has a specific intent. Google and the other search engines are aware of this, and they'll try to surface results that are aligned with that intent. If you can align your pages with that query intent, you'll improve the acquisition performance for that particular page. And not only that, you'll generally see a better quality of traffic coming through, which means better engagement, better conversion rate, and which is really good for your kind of business goals. So how do we actually apply this to a campaign? I think there's 3 pillars that we can use to do this. So we need to look, first of all, what intent Google favors for our keywords. We need to look at how competitors are optimizing for that. And then you need to think about what you could do better. So the purpose of this talk is to help you do that at scale. to introduce some tactics and workflows that you can employ for your campaigns. The first one, as I alluded to for Kane Jamison's model, is around analyzing SERP features. So as part of SearchLeeds, which is the conductor tool, we have this result type report where for all the keywords that you're tracking as part of your campaign, you can see the SERP features that are present. You can also generate the same type of report from SEMrush or Ahrefs. You can kind of export that, and based on the presence of those SERP features, you could start to assign intent. But I don't want to spend too long on this particular tactic for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm going to be sharing these slides at the end, so if there's any external links, you can click through to them. But it's all already been covered really well. Kevin in Dig, for example, has got a great guide kind of walking you through the entire process. So I don't want to kind of tread over old ground. The other reason that I don't want to spend too much time on it is I think that there's something that we can do that's perhaps more meaningful in terms of analyzing intent, and that's looking at the actual language of the search engine results pages. I think that's more powerful and gives us more actionable insights into what people actually want. So I'm going to take you through a little workflow that you can run through yourself, which is going to use a custom search engine. So for this particular workflow, what you need to do is for each of your pick, say, 10 of your most valuable keywords that you're tracking for your campaign, and set up a custom search engine for each of those keywords at cse.google.com. It's really simple to use. It's really kind of well documented about how you set it up, so it's pretty straightforward. And for each of those custom search engines that you create, extract the top 100 ranking URLs for that query. You can use the SERP Redux bookmarklet to do that. There's a link to it there. It's really simple to use, very quick, very easy. In your custom search engine, if you just follow these steps for setting it up, and the important part is in this second screenshot, because what you're telling it to do is you're saying to that custom search engine, only look at those specific URLs that you have inputted, which are the top 100 URLs for that particular query. This creates a really interesting kind of sandbox for you to play in, because what it does is it essentially means that you're looking at the relevance performance of those pages in isolation. It's not being impacted by site speed, by technical issues, by authority. It's just looking at relevance in isolation. So this is useful for a couple of reasons. Because you've got this sandbox environment where you're just looking at relevance, it means that if you notice that your page ranks higher in your custom search engine, then it's likely that you've got a technical or authority-based problem that you need to resolve. Whereas if your page ranks lower, it's better optimized for intent and for relevance. Sorry, other way around. If your page ranks lower, you need to improve the relevance of that page, and you can do that by optimizing the query intent. The other thing that you need to do is within your custom search engine, within that sandbox that you've created, take a look for occurrences of words or phrases in page titles, meta descriptions, that might signify a specific intent. So in my example of Office Space, every page title, every meta description also included the term rent, which I'm going to call my intent modifier. So Office is the query term, rent is the intent modifier. And in your custom search engine, you can play around with different kind of advanced search operators to really manipulate the results, get some interesting findings. One of my favorite search operators to use is around, which, as you can see there, is around in capitals and then in brackets 5. What that does is within your subset of pages that you've inputted into your custom search engine, it's going to look for, in this example, pages where the term office appears within 5 words of the term rent, which is what the 5 represents there. So it's proximity analysis within your kind of subset of pages. Why would that be interesting? Google has this patent, document ranking using word relationships. So Google needs to understand word relationships to effectively rank a page and address query intent. It has lots of different metrics and measures for doing this. One of the metrics that it does have is around understanding the closeness of words. So if it notices patterns in how closely specific words are appearing on a page, it can start to understand the relationship between those words. And because we're able to do that now within our custom search engine, we can really start to build a sense of which competitors or which landing pages are closely aligning their query term with an intent term. And if we notice any structures there, we can try and apply that to our own campaigns. So just to recap that particular process, custom search engine, just in a more controlled environment, it lets you look at competitors who are more closely aligning their query terms with the intent. You can look for patterns. So remember, I was looking for, using that around search operator, I was looking for 5. You can change that number. And if you start to see patterns between how the custom search engine results look versus how the live search engine results look, you can say that that's kind of a sweet spot, and that's something that you can work towards with your structure. And the next workflow that I'm going to take you through is custom SERP extraction. So this screenshot again, this is my Office Space search engine result page. Wouldn't it be really interesting to be able to kind of extract and analyze the copy that's on that page at scale and use that to assign intent? Well, we can. We can use a SERP extraction. So the SERPs are just standard web pages with HTML behind them. And that means that you can crawl and extract the data on those pages. So I should caveat this and say that if you do this, you might upset John Mueller. I've written about this for Search Engine Journal. And it's a little bit in violation of Google's terms of service. But I will not wish to sully the good name of SearchLeeds by advocating that you go out and do this. I'll say that if you use proxies, technically it's not you that's doing it, it's the proxy. Also, Google's not exactly innocent when it comes to scraping content. Think of this as revenge, but good revenge, like David versus Goliath revenge. That way, it's a victimless crime. So if you want to proceed with this with a guilt-free conscience, all you need to do, grab your SERP URLs. This is really easy to do because all Google search engine result page URLs follow the same pattern. Google.com/search Q equals, and then your keyword. Again, whenever you get the slides, I've built a tool that will just do this for you. So pretty simple. Whenever you've got that list, input it into Screaming Frog as a list, and set up these custom extractions within your crawl. So the top extraction, looking at XPath, is going to pull the page title, and the second is going to pull the meta description that's displayed in the SERP. You just need to remember to set it so it's extracting only the text for those particular elements. And I will caveat this to say that those XPaths do change from time to time. So if you go to apply this to your campaign and it doesn't seem to work, it might just be because Google has changed the structure of the HTML in its SERPs. But if you use the Chrome scraper extension, it's really easy to just get that XPath and apply it. This is what the results are going to look like whenever you've run that. So for each of your keywords, you're going to get the top 10 page titles, top 10 meta descriptions. And the point you want to get to is, so you can do some kind of analysis like this. So for each of your titles, you can assign an intent. So that looks really good, but how does it work? So there's just a simple formula that sits behind it. And all it's going to do is it's going to look for the presence of specific words within those page titles, within those meta descriptions that indicate an intent. So for example, if it sees the term best, it's going to assign it a research-based intent. If it sees the phrase rent, it's going to assign it transactional-based intent. So if you want to apply this, remember this is just a structure, this is just a framework. You'll need to modify it, make it work for your own SERPs, for your own campaigns, but it's OK, it works. The final piece of the puzzle is that formula. You just need to change C3, U3 to whatever your range is, and it's just going to kind of find out what the most common intent is within the elements that you've analyzed. So this is really interesting because it starts to look beyond SERP features. It starts to allow us to look at the language of the SERPs. Sometimes the language of the SERPs can actually give us more insight into what people want, and it can help you really ensure that your landing pages are very clearly aligned to query intent. So the final kind of workflow tactic that I want to run through is looking at the SERP displayed meta descriptions. So as SEOs, why do we care about the humble meta description? Spend hours crafting these beautifully written meta descriptions. We know they don't impact ranking directly. And a recent study showed that 92% of the time, Google rewrites them, or it cherry picks the specific parts of the page that it wants to display in the SERPs. So yeah, why do we spend our time doing them? Well, the fact that Google algorithmically rewrites meta descriptions or cherry picks specific parts of the page got me thinking, why does it do that? It probably does it because it thinks it's picking the elements of the page that are most likely to encourage a user to click through to a landing page. So if we can start to deconstruct and analyze the language in the SERP displayed meta descriptions at scale, that could give us some really useful, actionable insights. So throughout this talk, I've been kind of referencing commercial property type keywords, which is very tedious for everybody apart from me. So I wanted to run a test using a different type of keywords. So some addresses, some address styles, some addresses 2019, and then that same pattern for beach dresses, holiday dresses, and maxi dresses. So we can run what's called a market share report at Conductor, which is just going to pull the top 30, top 50 page SERP displayed page titles and meta descriptions for my keywords. But you can also use the Chrome Scraper extension to do that, or you can use the SERP extraction method that I've just talked about. So what I'm going to do, page titles and meta descriptions for the top 30 ranking results for each of those keywords. Because realistically, if you're an e-commerce category manager, you'd probably want to drive all the traffic from those keywords to your e-commerce category page, your transactional page. But would that be the best approach? So for this workflow, what I did, I got my SERP displayed meta descriptions and I put it into this tool, which cleanses stop words. So stop words are just commonly occurring words in the English language that don't really add context, and it just takes those out. It gives you cleaner results. And then what I did is put it into this online n-gram analyzer. It sounds complicated, but all that does is it counts the co-occurrence of single words or combinations of words within your inputted text. Remembering this is built from our SERP displayed meta descriptions. Let's take a look at the results. So for dress head terms, see a real prevalence for transactional phrases. There's latest collection, free delivery, free returns, prominence of transactional intent terms whenever we do our co-occurrence analysis. However, whenever we look at dress styles or dress 2019 for our particular types of dress, we can see that there's almost a complete absence of transactional terms for those particular results. So this might mean that hypothetically, in this situation, you're more likely to get an article or a style guide ranking for these particular terms and funneling that traffic through to your transactional pages or remarketing to them, however you want to convert them. And you can do that very simply just by running through this workflow. So why is this interesting? Again, it's a deeper dive into the language of the SERPs, and it's a deconstruction of the language that's being used and algorithmically selected by Google to show on its results pages. So even running a very simple linguistic analysis like co-occurrence, it gives us kind of obvious clues into the patterns of what it thinks people want to see. And you could start to incorporate into that into your on-page structure, into your internal linking, however you need to try and kind of make sure that Google understands how your landing pages are matching the query intent that it has identified for your keywords. And there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on briefly that's very relevant to that particular point. So Google has this pattern on phrase-based indexing. It makes two really interesting points. The first is that Google can rank the documents within its index based on the number of related phrases, not necessarily the query term. So these related phrases can actually be really useful, not just in terms of kind of making sure that your pages are going to offer meaningful user experiences, but it will actually impact directly ranking performance. And also, even if there's a page that has a low frequency of query terms, so the term that someone has entered into the search engines, it can still rank higher if it's got a plurality or a greater number of these related phrases. So that's really interesting. Because this co-occurrence analysis at scale in the SERPs, I think, can give us some insight into what those related phrases are. So it can help us build a picture of intent, of what users want, and we can apply that to improve ranking position. And I think that if we can find a way to scale up analysis of correlations between co-occurrence, proximity, and ranking position, that'll give us some really powerful tactics, really meaningful insights that are going to improve the performance of our campaigns. And that'll be very cool. So, does it work? I won't humble brag my way through these results. You can see how confident I am because I've written "yeah" in capital letters and put an exclamation point next to it. But it's good. You should try it. It works. So, key takeaways. The language in the SERPs can provide really useful insight on query intent. And you can apply those findings to optimize your on-page structure, your internal linking structure, and to make sure that your pages are optimized so that whenever a user from organic clicks through to your page, you're going to effectively engage and convert them. If you want, you can get the slides there. You can all maybe appreciate the irony of using a URL shortener to create what is actually quite a long URL. But I apologize for that. Thanks for listening.